He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to Coast View. This is a show that celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi a great place to live, work, and play. And today we have a very special guest, Jim McAvell, who's the Director of Communications and Public Affairs at Ingalls Shipbuilding. He's actually got a very critical job. It's an important job. You're about to understand why. And I told Jim this morning he's been at the shipyard for more than 40 years. He certainly doesn't look like it. Welcome to the Coast View and the SuperTalk Gulf Coast studio, Jim.
Thanks, Ricky. It's an honor to be with you. Enjoy your show a lot.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you being here. You know, like our friend, the former president of Ingalls, Jerry St. Pé, who was on the show not too long ago, you're a walking shipyard or shipbuilding, history book, aren't you?
That's a compliment, I think, so I will say yes, absolutely.
You've seen a lot. And what's interesting about your life is that it sort of parallels Jerry's in a lot of ways. Well, certainly Jerry's had a big impact on you.
Absolutely.
You both started as photographers, which I found so interesting. That we're going to come back to all of that as we had this conversation. But first, I actually want to set the stage. I often talk about the bookends. You have Ingalls and Chevron on one end, you've got Stennis on the other, and all that's happening in between. We have this incredibly diverse economy that is really the envy of the rest of the state in some respects. It's certainly one of the reasons we have such a strong region of the state. And I would say Ingalls is the star of that conversation. It's the largest industrial employer in the state. How many employees?
Right now, about 12,000.
That's incredible. How many of those in Mississippi?
80%.
That's unbelievable. And a lot over, some from Louisiana, I guess.
We have a few from Louisiana still, and about 1,900 come from Mobile County. There was a time when we were like the second largest employer in Mobile County.
Goodness gracious. So what's the annual payroll of Ingalls?
Annual payroll is about $170 million, breaks down about $14 million a week.
Goodness gracious. That's big. How much money does Ingalls spend inside the state to Mississippi businesses?
We have about 150 suppliers from within the state of Mississippi, and we spend right at $120 million a year in Mississippi, buying goods, services, ship parts.
So you get a feeling of why Ingalls is so important, but it's also important in terms of its strategic importance to the United States. Senator Roger Wicker actually wrote this week about why it's important. What are the strategic importance of a Navy and why we have to have a bigger number of ships. Why is that so important?
Well, if you look back at the history of the country, the United States Navy is the only service spelled out in the Constitution of the United States that you will keep a standing Navy. Mm-hmm. We're a global nation. We've been a global nation as long as the United States has existed. To be a global nation, you have to have trading sea lanes. You've got to have power projection. Mm-hmm. You've got to be able to defend yourself offshore so that you don't have to defend yourself onshore. And that's what the Navy Marine Corps do.
So this whole issue of freedom of navigation is huge.
Absolutely.
And, when you look at China and Russia and even Iran, China, for example, 400 ships projected by the year 2025. You really get a sense of why it's important for us to ramp this up. So the Ships Act that was passed in 2017 that Roger Wicker actually presented, it was going to bring the current inventory of ships in America from 293 to what?
355.
355.
If you look back, you'll remember that President Reagan's goal was a 600-ship Navy. It didn't get there, but now it is codified in federal law that the Navy will have 355 ships.
And then he introduced the Ships Implementation Act, which does what?
That provides the budget. So there's two steps to buying ships. There's an authorizing committee in the Congress and an appropriations committee in the Congress. 355 ships being law is what the authorizers say you shall have 355. But somebody's got to pay for those. And so you've got to establish a budget. You've got to establish which ships you're going to build to get to the 355, and that's what he basically added teeth to his previous law.
So military ships are currently built in New England, Wisconsin, California, and Mississippi.
And Alabama, and the Gulf Coast, Alabama.
Okay, and so why is stability so critical?
Stability is important for employment. It's important for communities where our employees live. It's important to the supplier base that we talked about earlier. If you don't know, you have 2 ships coming a year, or 3 ships, or even 1 ship, whatever it is, you don't want to get 2 this year, skip 4 years, get 2 more, that sort of thing, because the learning curve of the shipbuilders, the small businesses that we buy from across the state, they can't build and buy those spare parts and have them sit in their own warehouse for 2 years.
So you don't want high points and low points where you have.
You want a pretty steady. Back in the 70s, we were at about 25,000 employees, and we would go up 2,000 or 3,000 and down 2,000 or 3,000 in a 3-4 month period, and that's hard on schools, it's hard on communities, it's hard on families. So stable. Right now, we've been in the 11, 12, 13,000 range for the last 8 or 10 years. And that's just better for everybody.
Is that what's projected going forward?
Yes, 12, maybe 13, depending on how things go. But 11 to 12 is about where we'll stay. So
we know that Ingalls is critical because of the thousands of jobs that it has. We know it's critical because of the amount of money that it's spent, the millions of dollars, to the Mississippi-based businesses. We know why it's important strategically for this country. And then we have a sense that because of the leadership of Roger Wicker and others, that we're keeping the focus on making sure that we're constantly building ships and getting to that special 355 number. So the future should be bright for shipbuilding.
Future, as we look out right now, looking out 5, 6, 7, 10 years, the future is very bright for shipbuilding.
So, okay, how in the world did you end up at Ingalls? You were born in Batesville.
Born in Batesville, grew up in Batesville, went to Ole Miss. Actually was at Ole Miss. We were a couple of years apart with Senator Wicker and a cousin of his that also ended up in the journalism business. Dad had been a radio broadcaster, a Western Auto employee. He was in the National Guard, actually was involved in the group of federalized National Guardsmen when James Meredith was going to Ole Miss. He was in the Jeeps going from Batesville over there for that.
Let's real quick.
Yeah.
This is one of those intersection points with Jerry in a way. So Jerry was raised in the Ninth Ward of New Orleans. Mm-hmm. He worked for a local newspaper, the predecessor for the Times-Picayune. Eventually made his way over to the predecessor to the Mississippi Press. He worked for 2 guys, Easton King and Ira Harkey. Ira Harkey was ultimately actually won a Pulitzer Prize for writing about the James Meredith situation, and Jerry was actually there at that time working at the newspaper. So kind of amazing that your dad was actually on the ground at Oxford during that time. So continue on.
The one thing he taught me early in life was working. I worked with him at the Western Auto Store. I delivered newspapers. You came out of the newspaper business.
Yeah.
My first paying job was delivering newspapers for the Commercial Appeal out of Memphis. Started working with the local weekly newspaper in high school, did some sports reporting and photography, did some sports broadcasting for South Panola, the University of South Panola, in high school and in college, and went to college to go be a lawyer, and was going out of the journalism business, but as you've said about your career, sometimes your career makes decisions for you, and friend of mine who's actually still in the newspaper business in Hattiesburg, Buster Wolf, called me one day, had a photographer sick. Ole Miss had a basketball game against Tennessee. He said, hey, you mind coming to shoot it? Ole Miss was terrible in basketball in those days. They're pretty good now. But I said, sure, I'll go shoot you a few pictures. Well, it turned out to be the night that Ole Miss decided to upset third-ranked Tennessee, and suddenly every newspaper in Mississippi and Tennessee wanted pictures from the only guy basically that was walking around there with a camera that night.
Wow.
So fell in love with it.
You were told along the way that you're not going to be able to make a living as a photographer.
I did indeed. One of the great men in my life, a guy named Ed Meek, who ran the PR department at that time. There was when I graduated from Ole Miss, started law school, figured out that my life's dream was not going to be my life, and so I went back and I had been a political science graduate. So Ed said, well, you're going to have to get something that says journalism attached to your degree in order to get a job. So I went back and took a bunch of journalism classes. Now, during that time, I was working for AP and the Clarion Ledger and the Memphis papers and all. And I had a professor who taught me as much about what not to do as what to do, a guy named Gail Denley. He's a legend in Ole Miss journalism. First couple of assignments, he said, you're never going to make a living at photography. You better go back to law school. Mm-hmm. Well, fortunately, I was able to prove him wrong. I didn't listen, exactly.
Like you said, there are these moments in our lives. After the break, we'll come back and just continue this conversation. But, you're right. We talked about this offline. It's been basically part of the theme for every conversation I've had, that people have these moments in their lives. And the question is, are you ready for your moment when it occurs? And they take that turn, and it changes the trajectory of their lives. It might be a conversation. It might be just an event. Who knows what that's going to be? You had that moment in your life changed everything.
Changed everything.
So we'll come back after this break. We've got the head of Public Affairs and Communications, and he does a lot of different things. But we'll be back with Jim McIlvaine after this break.
Things that keep you up at night. Let's see. Work stress, crying babies, your laundry list. Oh, yeah, and a horrible cold. Can't help with all of them, but NyQuil Severe can help you with that cold. NyQuil Severe is maximum strength relief for all your cold and flu symptoms. Sneezing, sniffling, stuffiness, soreness. When all you want to do is sleep, NyQuil Severe lets you rest tonight so you can get back to your life tomorrow. NyQuil, the nighttime sniffling, sneezing, coughing, achy, stuffy head, best sleep with a cold medicine.
Hey, it's Flo. And you know what word I've never understood? Top hat. Aren't all hats on top? They're like the toppest part of every outfit. Unless I've been doing it wrong. That's why I stick with simple words like Flotection. It means the sense of security you'll feel when your new home is protected by home insurance through me and Progressive. Also, there shouldn't be a top hat unless there's a bottom hat. Wait, is that what underwear is?
Save an average of 17% on car insurance when you bundle home and auto through Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Discount not available in all states or situations.
Liberty Mutual Insurance Company presents and Doug.
Welcome to Burger Palace. What would you like today?
Yes, I'd like to tell you that Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need.
This is Burger Palace. Do you want any food?
Yes, one Palace party meal. No, Limu, they won't put insects on a burger. No, you can't talk to the manager.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
When you're diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer,
a million questions flood your mind.
How can this be happening?
Am I going to be able to work?
What's a subtype?
What do I do now?
We know.
We went through it too.
But once you start to understand your options,
you can partner with your doctor
and find ways to face MBC on your own terms.
Visit findyourmbcvoice.com and learn how to speak up and have a more informed conversation with your doctor.
Some questions have answers.
Visit findyourmbcvoice.com to find some of yours.
You may have heard people say the best thing about Double Shop is their CBD selection, which I will say is superb. Expertly selected and endorsed by physicians, along with their selection of herbal products. And their selection of smoking accessories department is gigantic. But what they forget is Double Shop's titanically massive beer selection. Double Shop has the largest selection of beer in the state. Domestic, craft, micro, local, you name it, they have it. And if they don't have it, they'll try and get it.
Have you recently heard someone say how great Double Shop's beer selection is? Their beer selection is pretty fantastic. They carry everything legally allowed. But the real reason Double Shop is such a fun store is because they have everything to make life fun. Happy. Great hookahs, smoking accessories, herbal supplements, and physician-recommended CBDs. Not to mention wines and spirits.
Everyone loves Double Shop for their own reason. Come find your reason. Double Shop, Ocean Springs North at Exit 50. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
This is Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to the Coast View. I've got Jim McInvale, who's the Director of Communications and Public Affairs for Ingalls Shipbuilding. We had a great conversation to start our conversation about why Ingalls is so strategically important to the coast and to the nation. And then we sort of began his life's journey, started in Batesville, actually started in law school, and was introduced to journalism and photography, and that sort of changed his life. So that's kind of where we were when we left it off. So Jim, pick it up from there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, in between those two, actually, I got married in the summer of 1976, and I have to give a lot of thanks and props, as they say, to my wife Nancy, who married a lawyer to be in August of 76, and by January of 77, she was married to a guy who was about to be a photographer somewhere. So she had a lot of patience, still has a lot of patience, but I would not be without where I am without her standing behind me when I had to make that kind of shift in a career path. So you get to the end of that semester, and now I've got my journalism degree to go with my political science degree, and so now you got to find a job. She'd been teaching school for that entire year, and so I had a job offer at a newspaper in Asheville, North Carolina. Could have gone to work at the Clarion Ledger, where I had been stringing.
Asheville's a beautiful place.
Beautiful place, absolutely.
But it's not Mississippi.
It's a long way from Mississippi. And I had an interview at Ingalls Shipbuilding in Pascagoula. They had a fellow that had been a photographer there for 25 or 30 years and was tiring. I honestly had never been to the Mississippi Gulf Coast until I came down to Pascagoula to interview for that job. Stayed in the old LaFont Inn. Ron Elias, a legend at the Sun Herald.
Of course.
They still run his pictures around
of course.
Camille time. Had the interview. They saw something. I've said this to Jerry, and I've said it about Jerry more than once. St. Pay saw something in me that I didn't see myself. They hired me. I was a photographer for a couple of years. He started me writing for the Ingalls News, became the editor of the Ingalls News. I'd go with him to when he made speeches, and then I eventually would make some speeches when he couldn't make it, that sort of thing. And as they say, the rest is history. Been there 43 years.
Yeah, Roland was that to me. He was my Jerry. Roland Weeks, the former publisher of the Sun Herald, and there's just something about men like that who pluck us out of the population and begin to give us the special attention and give us their wisdom. It had to have been amazing to have the opportunity to be mentored by Jerry St. Pay.
It was incredible, and I have to also say, not just in work. A lot of people know St. Pay from work. When you're around him as closely as we were over the years, you see how he treats his kids. I mean, he handwritten notes to his kids all the time, and you see a good dad who's also working very hard. Jerry's written notes to my daughter Brooke over the years at important times in her life, and you learn not just work skills but life skills from people like that.
You really do.
He's an amazing individual.
When I was publisher of the Sun Herald, I heard from Jerry pretty regularly. It could be a story or maybe something we did in the community, but it was always constructive and complimentary and aspirational. He was so positive in the way that he dealt. And even now, I'll have a show and he'll send me a note. Listen to this morning show. It was terrific.
Absolutely.
That's just in his DNA, isn't it?
It's absolutely in his DNA. I don't know. They make the Energizer Bunny, but he's got more strength than that.
So tell me about So you joined the shipyard. You actually were there during some really critical moments in the shipyard. Like, for example, Jerry and I talked in great detail about the public-private partnership between Ingalls and the state of Mississippi and how it was literally the template for how a public-private partnership ought to work. It carries on through today.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about that, Jim.
So, Ingalls is in Pascagoula because of a public-private partnership. Ingalls was an Alabama family. The state government created something in the mid-'30s called BAWI, the Balance Agriculture with Industries Act. Ingalls was the first industrial suitor, for lack of a better word. Mississippi went and got Alabama company to come to Mississippi, built a shipyard on the east bank of the river, rented it to Ingalls. Fast forward, they built the first all-welded ship in the world. Built some ships in World War II, Korea, 1961, Litton Industries buys the family out, and is
at this point they're still on the West Bank, correct?
No, still on the East Bank.
Still on the East Bank. West Bank came with
came in the mid '60s when ships were getting bigger. There was the Cold War sort of build up. There were a couple of contracts. One was for 30 destroyers, the Spruance class, and Litton needed a bigger facility. The East Bank just was not laid out to build that many ships at one time. New Jersey tried to get Litton to move Ingalls there. Florida tried to, and the legislature and the governor of Mississippi said, no, this is our shipyard, and came in and literally built the first new shipyard built in the United States since World War II on the west bank of the shipyard, the west bank of the river, and $144 million later, blowing and going. Like I said, they got to 25,000 employees by the late 70s. Built the Spruances, built large deck amphibs, built the Ticonderoga cruisers and the Arleigh Burke destroyers that we're still building today, and that partnership has continued. It's the most amazing thing to watch from the inside and to hear people talk about it from the outside. We actually sit on a piece of state-owned property. So when the state invests money in there, they're not just investing money in a private company. They're investing in a state-owned piece of property, and they've done it several times. We're in the process right now of finishing what Jerry calls Shipyard of the Future, too. We're spending about $600 million just in modernizing the yard. Now, keep in mind, it was only $144 million to build it. Mm-hmm. We're spending over $600 million, of which the state of Mississippi put in $200 million as an incentive to get that additional investment, and it sets the shipyard for the next generation of shipbuilders.
Wow! So the shipyard now is operating on both sides of the river these days.
Right.
And the East Bank, what's the status of the East Bank these days?
East Bank was completely, basically obliterated in Katrina. Mm-hmm. And it sat fallow for several years as we rebuilt the West Bank, got back to building, and then it was a storage area and a couple of warehouses and that sort of thing. The other thing that the company has made the investment, we're spending about $150 million on the East Bank and bringing it back to production work. Mm-hmm. We're going to build some smaller sections of ship, and then we'll barge those to the West Bank to assemble them. But it brings life back into the original East Bank yard, which is cool.
So you were telling me offline, your job is just evolved over many years. So specifically, what are you responsible for today?
So today I'm responsible, of course, for the communications part, internal and regional. The corporation, HII, handles the media, which is okay with me. Mm-hmm. I had enough time to spend on the media. Mm-hmm. I also have the community affairs organization, dealing with the local schools, the local charities, employee groups, and things like that. Dorothy Shaw, legend.
Yeah.
She runs all of that for me and does the best job of anybody in the state of Mississippi of just keeping, as you mentioned earlier, the name of Ingalls out in the community, not just in the business community, but the community at large. And I also have the state and local government relations piece. As I said, we sit on a piece of state property, so state government's important to us. So we spend a lot of time, making sure that legislators from around the state know what the state has in that shipyard and how it affects not just the coastal economy, but the economy of the entire state.
So and while that's your direct responsibility that you just mentioned, you also have congressional communications that are taking place on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
So what I was saying to you during the break is that the importance of Ingalls to the coast community, the coastal region, is cannot be overstated. And any political leader, whether they're a local city councilman or whether they're a senator or whether the governor of the state, which we'll come back to Phil Bryant and the work that he did, they should watch the video conversation I had with Jerry St. Page. They should watch this one so they can really begin to gain their own elevator speech about why Ingalls is so critical, because they all should know. They should all understand it. And you've done a really good job of kind of nailing that down. So it's been 40 years. What we're gonna do in the next segment is you've made some interesting trips along the way. Mm-hmm. There was a particular picture that you took in Jerry's book with the Prime Minister of Israel, Rabin. And I want to talk about that and what you learned during those days. You also had the opportunity to spend time with Nancy Reagan. There's probably others that you have as well. And usually these are through, banging a bottle of champagne against a keel, right?
Right.
You've seen, how many of those have you seen over the years?
Over 100.
Wow.
Over 100. It's getting close to time to narrow that number down a little bit. But I know it's over 100.
Boy, that's a lot of history, isn't it?
It is indeed.
So what we're going to do after this break is we're going to continue the conversation about Ingles' significance today, the kind of things that are going on today. And then Jim's got some great stories to tell about his travels with Governor Bryant and then some of the things that have actually occurred, as I mentioned, during some of the celebrations of launching ships here at Ingles. And we'll come back and get to that as well. So we have Jim McIngvale. For whatever reason, I want to say McIngvale, but McIngvale.
Hard name.
And I've known you forever, and I still mess that up. Director of Communications and Public Affairs at Ingles. We'll be back after this break.
Subscribe for free to the Coast View podcast on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
From the Singing River Electric and Coast Electric Newsroom, your news now.
The old Gulfport Library will soon be restored to its former glory. The building that sits on Highway 90 and 21st Avenue is being renovated to be used as a new base of operations for the Coast Transit Authority. The parking garage just north of the old library will be renovated too, with both projects scheduled to be completed by the end of April. 2 campers were left destroyed by fire yesterday in Long Beach. It's believed that the fire started with one camper, then quickly spread to the second before firefighters from multiple units were able to put out the fire on Cronier Avenue. The cause of the fire is under investigation. Officials with the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources announced yesterday that commercial fishing season for red drum will close today at 11:59 p.m. And voting for the special election for Pascagoula's mayor to fill that unexpired term is today. Polls will be open until 7 o'clock this evening. If you need some more information, contact the city clerk's office at 228-938-6615. For SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1, I'm Kyle Curley.
Have you made your New Year's resolution yet? Resolve to make 2020 a year to remember with a new lifestyle. At Arbor Properties, you'll discover features, amenities, and services that are only found at an Arbor Properties community. Whether you're looking to actively unwind in one of 5 fully equipped fitness studios, enjoy the free fitness classes, or reserve a spot with a personal trainer, Arbor Properties is the place to conquer your fitness goals. Arbor Properties apartment homes features granite countertops, custom cabinetry, luxury flooring, and upgraded fixtures. Arbor Properties' resolution is to ensure your living experience is nothing less than exceptional. Arbor Properties isn't just a place to live, it's a way of life. Let Arbor Properties help make 2020 your best year yet. Find your new home at Arborview d'Iberville, Arbor Landing on the river in Biloxi, Arbor Place, Biloxi, Arbor Village at Pass Road, Gulfport, or Arbor Station in Long Beach. Like Arbor Properties on Facebook.
Everyone in my family uses electricity differently. But when it comes to our Touchstone Energy Cooperative, we all think about it the same way. The co-op is power. Sure, electricity turns the lights on, but power is the information I get from my co-op about efficiency, safety, technology. And I trust the co-op because we are the co-op.
They're our neighbors.
Our friends. Our home.
Brought to you by Coast Electric and Singing River Electric, your Touchstone Energy Cooperatives.
I'm J.B. Brown, one of the sports medicine doctors at Bienville Orthopedic Specialist. So athletes put their bodies through an extreme amount of activity, and sometimes they will have strains and sprains. So the difference boils down to a couple of different things here. Sprains are typically used to refer to stretching or tearing a ligament, and ligaments connect our bones together. Strains, on the other hand, are referred to muscle injuries or tendon injuries, which attach those muscles to the bone. Anytime an athlete experiences either of these, their symptoms always include pain, swelling, soreness, and if it's severe enough, they may not be able to continue in their athletic endeavors. Sometimes they'll have bruising and stiffness, and sometimes muscle spasm occurs. So once that happens to an athlete, we recommend that they discontinue their athletic activity and seek some medical care. What we like to do is to get the body part elevated as soon as possible. We like to place ice on it. We start anti-inflammatory medications. So this gives them a chance to start the healing process quickly, which allows us to get them back into the game sooner than if we waited a little bit later.
What would you do with extra cash? Take a bucket list vacation? Put in a pool? Pay off high-interest debt? Why not let the equity in your home pay you back for all the years you've paid into it? With Keesler Federal Credit Union's low-rate home equity loan or line of credit, you'll have the freedom and flexibility to do whatever matters most to you. Apply today at kfcu.org.
Available on primary residence only in Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, and Florida. Membership and credit eligibility required. Equal housing lender. NMLS number 408911.
The Dean's List with Janice Dean.
A Florida football player who decided there were things and people more important than the game he was playing makes today's Dean's List. When Frank Calderon's team took the field in his high school football game, he made a detour towards the stands. It was Pensacola Catholic's last big game, but his thoughts were with his grandmother, Amparo. Amparo is battling cancer, and Frank is caring for her. Frank gave his grandmother flowers and a hug before saying, "I love you," in a video that's gone viral for obvious reasons. Family always comes first, he says. We've been close since I was born, and she's always been there for me. Pensacola Catholic won that night, finishing the season undefeated. Meanwhile, Frank is still helping Amparo win her battle. He says she's a strong woman, and she's beat it once, she can beat it again. Thank you, Frank, for reminding us of what's important. And Amparo, our prayers are with you as you continue your fight. Janice Dean, Fox News.
The Mississippi Power Weather Center. Your weather now.
Cloudy today with a 30% chance of scattered showers and thunderstorms. Temperatures in the low 70s. Tonight, a chance of rain increases to 40%. Cloudy overnight, the low 62. More of the same tomorrow. 40% chance of showers and thunderstorms expected. High in the low 70s. An 80% chance of rain and thunderstorms tomorrow night. The low 56. Visit MississippiPower.com/ways to save to learn about programs and resources that can help you save energy and money on your electric bill.
He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. I have my friend Jim McInville with me today, the Director of Communications and Public Affairs for Ingalls Shipbuilding. And we've had a great conversation about the strategic importance, not only locally but nationally, of Ingalls and his life story from Batesville to Ingalls. And we were actually, as we were finishing up, we were talking about Ingalls of today, and he's going to continue this conversation. Then we've got some really cool things to tell you about, trips he took along the way and the kind of work that he did to bring attention to Ingalls. So, what else about the Ingalls of today do you want to talk about, Jim?
So, living in Mississippi, you know this. The Navy we talked about is constitutionally mandated, and it's very cool to be involved with Navy stuff. Ingalls Shipbuilding built 70% of the surface warships that are out protecting our nation and the sea lanes around the world. So what does that mean to everyday Mississippian? Well, when you turn on the TV at night and you see 2 destroyers firing missiles into Syria, or you see snipers taking out terrorists that have hijacked a cargo vessel, the workers of Ingalls, trust me, know this. They can look at that TV video and say, we built that, or I welded on that ship, or I was an electrician, I built that LHA. And the sense of pride that goes from those employees to their families, to the community, to the state at large, and to the nation it's the kind of thing you can't quantify, but you know it's there. Ingalls has obviously been an amazing part of my life, but it's an amazing part of the history of the state of Mississippi as well.
It really is. We've been lucky in that we've had great governor leadership throughout a long history. I think about Governor Mabus, who went on to be Secretary of Navy, and Haley Barbour. After Hurricane Katrina, we got to watch him on a mission because he realized that we had to get the casinos back open again. We had to get Ingalls back open again. We had to get Chevron moving. Simultaneously, he was working on a number of fronts to get the economy of Mississippi going again. He was really important, and the decisions he made were really important to Ingalls getting back on their feet quickly, wasn't he?
Absolutely. Both for our employees and for the company. Haley came to the shipyard 3-4 weeks after Katrina. not with TV cameras, not to show off what he was doing. It was he had one question: what do y'all need? What does Ingalls need to go back to making that $14 million a week payroll? Because there was a couple of weeks there we were completely shut down. That's $30 million that's not going into the local economy. What we needed, because we had employees leave the state and leave the region after Katrina, a lot came back, a lot didn't. We needed a place to train a lot of people very quickly. He and Senator Cochran, the same way Senator Lott, all the leaders in Mississippi said, we got to get this package together, and they got it right, and it included a lot of money for workforce training. We have now sitting out in front of the shipyard our showcase building. It's called the Haley Reeves Barber Maritime Training Academy. That was built with federal Katrina funds to help Ingalls get people back into the shipbuilding business and get them back to work as quickly as possible.
That's incredible. He was so focused on the Katrina recovery effort. By the time Phil Bryant came into his position, he was able to begin to say, okay, what do we do to kind of button up what's left from Katrina? But what additionally do we need to do around the world to make sure that clients and customers and others are aware of what Mississippi has to offer? Absolutely. You've got a great story to tell about your work with Phil Bryant in that arena. Tell about that.
And that actually even starts with Haley, because Phil was lieutenant governor for those 8 years and saw what it took. So Haley concentrated on getting Mississippi back to as close to normal as you can call it. Phil's challenge when he came in was to rebuild the reputation of the state inside and outside, and bring work in, bring more jobs in, not just keep the jobs, but bring jobs in. And he did that both in the United States and around the world. As he used to say, he liked being able to go to other countries and say that he had somebody from his largest employer with him. So I made a lot of those trips with him. I went to Israel several times, Japan, South Korea. I saw where they build Hyundai and Kia cars and that sort of thing. And everywhere we went, he was being a salesman and ambassador for the state of Mississippi.
So because it was the governor of the state of Mississippi, and because of this important strategic partner in Ingalls, when you went to Israel, you literally met with Netanyahu?
We literally had met with in a large group, and then had a private conversation, having coffee with Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Tell us about that.
So the first time we went, and there was, I have to tell you, there was an Ingalls piece to all of this too, because at the time we weren't sure where the U.S. Navy was going, and so we were looking at some international shipbuilding. We had built ships for Israel in the 1990s. That's when we met Minister Rabin. So in the conversation with Israel, it was about additional ships for us, but it was also letting the Prime Minister and his team know that there was a state in the United States that had a great love and interest in Israel. And so we spent a lot of time with him. I took him, for example, a christening program from one of the SAR 5 Corvette christenings, and he's reading it, and he gets sort of this melancholy look on his face, and he looks up and he said, "Thank you for this." He said, General Ram, who I see his picture here in this, was the principal speaker at the christening, was his brother's first commanding officer in the Israeli army.
Wow.
Netanyahu's brother was the only casualty at the raid on Entebbe. So, I mean, there's this connection that just sort of goes from place to place to place. And
man, what a special conversation. Absolutely. I mean, you never forget those.
You never do.
And when you see Phil in that environment, tell me about how is he?
He's magical. I mean, he can sit and have a conversation with anybody. I mean, we went to Saudi Arabia and had a conversation with the defense minister, the commerce minister. He took Mary Graham with him from Gulf Coast Community College on that Saudi Arabia trip. And we're sitting in a room with the prime minister, the minister of education, the minister of training, and those kind of people. That's sort of an audience that you just don't put together by accident.
So let's put this in perspective, though. You mentioned Mary Graham, and this came up in my conversation with Dickie Scruggs as well. But most people don't realize that Mississippi has one of the strongest community college systems in the United States.
Absolutely.
And the role that the community college system is playing in the state of Mississippi around skills training is strategically critical to Ingalls.
Absolutely it is.
So this opportunity to be able to demonstrate commitment at all levels. That's smart
He
did that.
He took a team. He took the Airbus folks from North Mississippi. He took people from businesses from all over the state to say, these are the successful businesses in my state. We're here to see what we can do to help you. On the community college piece, I have seen the community college obviously for 40 years building shipbuilders for us. 5 years ago, I had what I consider one of the great honors of my career. The Jackson County Board of Supervisors put me on Mary Graham's board at Gulf Coast Community College.
Mm-hmm.
So now I get to see it inside too, and not just at Ingalls. And you're right, not just Gulf Coast, which obviously I'm prouder of than most of the others, but the community college system in Mississippi is the best I know of in the country, in the world, and none of us in the industry could do what we do without knowing that we had the community colleges building the workers we need.
As you know, I spent time in Alabama and Louisiana and Georgia, for a matter of fact, but I've never seen anything like what we have here. It's just, it is literally a gem. And as we discussed in my conversation with Dickie Scruggs, it's not important for everyone to go get a degree. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's a better route for some to go in the direction of skills training, because there's so many incredible jobs that pay extremely well
with no college debt.
With no college debt, and we have a community college system that literally, helps that process forward.
Absolutely.
So that's a beautiful story. So what other trips did you take along the way with Phil Bryant?
Japan a couple of times. Like I said, South Korea 3 times. Went to shipyards in South Korea too. They are a big shipbuilding country. Canada, all over the U.S. to different sorts of events.
Mm-hmm.
Israel was sort of for me the crowning gem. Having been on ships that we built for Israel and having met with leaders during those days, to say I had been there was.
Well, I think some people think of a political figure, traveling around the world. They in their mind they might think about junkets and they're going to go play golf and whatever. These don't sound like that.
No, sir. We they may be with some people, but not with Phil Bryant. He's a former deputy sheriff, and he has that mentality. We were up early working and hitting it all day. We'd spend a day, for example, in Busan, South Korea. We hit the Kia plant, we hit the Hyundai plant, we hit 3 shipyards, and
very regimented.
Very regimented.
Focused on return
on investment.
for sure.
You got
return on Mississippi.
On Mississippi. That's right.
Wow, what a great part of the story. I mean, it really does take a lot of levels working together. To make a shipyard tick, doesn't it?
Mississippi does it better than anybody else.
Man, that is so cool to hear that part of the story. Hey, so when we come back, we're going to talk about interesting times. Like, what do you call it? Keel laying?
Keel laying.
Yeah.
Keel layings, christenings.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're gonna talk about some of those moments, and in particular the Rabin story that you want to tell, and actually the picture that you took of Nancy Reagan and Jerry St. Pay's book. We'll be back right after this break.
Just like money in your pocket, that's Super Pawn. When you trade with us, you always get our best. Super deals are wide, whether you sell or buy. We cash checks, we pay bills, we make loans like no one will, and help you keep your pockets filled. Just like money in your pocket, that's Super Pawn.
You may have heard people say the best thing about Double Shop is their CBD selection, which I will say is superb. Expertly selected and endorsed by physicians, along with their selection of herbal products. And their selection of smoking accessories department is gigantic. But what they forget is Double Shop's titanically massive beer selection. Double Shop has the largest selection of beer in the state. Domestic, craft, micro, local, you name it, they have it. And if they don't have it, they'll try and get it.
Have you recently heard someone say how great Double Shop's beer selection is? Their beer selection is pretty fantastic. They carry everything legally allowed. But the real reason Double Shop is such a fun store is because they have everything to make life fun. happy. Great hookah, smoking accessories, herbal supplements, and physician-recommended CBDs. Not to mention wines and spirits.
Everyone loves Double Shop for their own reason. Come find your reason. Double Shop, Ocean Springs North at Exit 50. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Things that keep you up at night. Let's see. Work stress, crying babies, your laundry list. Oh, yeah, and a horrible cold. Can't help with all of them, but NyQuil Severe can help you with that cold. NyQuil Severe is maximum strength relief for all your cold and flu symptoms. Sneezing, sniffling, stuffiness, soreness. When all you want to do is sleep, NyQuil Severe lets you rest tonight so you can get back to your life tomorrow. NyQuil, the nighttime sniffling, sneezing, coughing, achy, stuffy head, best sleep with a cold medicine.
Hey, it's Flo. And you know what word I've never understood? Top hat. Aren't all hats on top? They're like the toppest part of every outfit. Unless I've been doing it wrong. That's why I stick with simple words like Flotection. It means the sense of security you'll feel when your new home is protected by home insurance through me and Progressive. Also, there shouldn't be a top hat unless there's a bottom hat. Wait, is that what underwear is?
Save an average of 17% on car insurance when you bundle home and auto through Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers. Discount not available in all states or situations.
When the power goes out, you feel helpless. Stumbling in the dark, especially during a hurricane, is dreadful. Bay Motor Winding wants you to have your comfort and independence. A Briggs & Stratton standby generator system from Bay Motor Winding will automatically power your entire home, keeping the lights, appliances, and cooling running smoothly. Select Briggs & Stratton generators come with a 10-year parts and labor warranty. Visit baymotorwinding.com before the power goes out.
This is Fox on Justice. Royce Williams was injured in a Kansas car accident in 2015. After a hospital stay, he needed help doing basic things at home. And so his wife, Mary, took time off from her job to be there for Royce. They worked out an arrangement where Royce would pay Mary $25 a day to make meals, help him in the bathroom, and do laundry. Over 3 months, the total came to $2,625. They submitted a claim for that amount to their car insurance company, but Geico denied the claim. The reasoning, one spouse is required to care for the other without pay because that's part of the marriage agreement. If Royce had hired anyone else to take care of him, Geico would pay, but not Mary. The Williamses went to court and lost, but on appeal, the Kansas Supreme Court disagreed and ordered Geico to pay the caregiver even if you're married to her. With Fox on Justice, Hank Weinblum, Fox News.
His love for the coast is why he's here. It's Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back. I have Jim McInville, who is the Director of Communication and Public Affairs from Ingalls Shipbuilding. We've done a tour of duty, haven't we, Jim?
We have indeed.
From the beginning and the importance of Ingalls and all of that. But let's tell some of the interesting stories that you've come across in your role.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Nancy Reagan during their first campaign. She actually spent the day on the Gulf Coast, and I got assigned. Jerry sent me to go be their photographer, and so around town, and then took her through the shipyard, and just meeting a lady with that kind of style and grace. She talked to welders like they were her neighbors, and just class people. All the political officials, being around Stennis and Eastland and
so come back to Nancy Reagan for a second.
Yep.
What I held up a second ago was a picture that you took that's in Jerry's book. But you said she's a tough lady. Tell about that.
She is a tough lady. And when we were walking through the fabrication shop, and this was back during the campaign, she was talking to a lady who I think was a welder, and was so into that conversation that she was not really watching where she was going, and she kicked a steel beam, and actually brought a little blood in her right ankle. The amazing part was she never changed facial expressions. She never slowed down. She finished that conversation and got to the end of the row where she was talking to people.
Wow.
And then got back in the car and said, "Okay, somebody help me with my ankle." Just the strength that it takes to be that kind of a person. She was an amazing person to be around.
And then the Prime Minister, tell about that.
Prime Minister, as I mentioned, Mr. Rabin was for Ed Ingalls for the steel, started fabrication and keel laying for the first Israeli Corvette in what had to be 91 time frame. And you've been around a lot of leaders. I've been around a lot of leaders. There are those that you meet that you just know they're special. Minister Rabin was one of those, and I told Prime Minister Netanyahu that I had met him, and that and he basically said, yes, I wish I could be like that myself. I mean, and he's the Prime Minister,
right?
But there are strong leaders in this country, and frankly, I put Jerry St. Pé in that group. He's been a leader in Mississippi and in Litton Industries back in the day, and you meet certain people, and you know, even before they are special, you know they are going to be special. I met Phil Bryant when he was in the legislature, and then he gets appointed state auditor by Governor Fordyce, and then he's lieutenant governor. He was one of those guys you just know is going to be special. You don't know how, you don't know when, what's going to cause it. Haley Barbour the same way with Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
You just know that there are people that are born to be leaders, and they get their moment.
And Phil's ultimate claim to fame is his ability to communicate with anyone,
and treats them all the same way.
What a special!
They're all special.
He when I was publisher of the Sun Herald, we visited an awful lot, and he'd come in with his cowboy boots on and his blue jeans, and he's just happy to be alive and focused on whatever it is he's focused on, and great about communicating that, and he makes you want to help him.
He does. He absolutely does.
So were there others along the way that, like you mentioned, John Stennis? My goodness,
John Stennis it was in the shipyards, often, obviously, in my early career. He was involved in a project when I came to the yard. We were actually building 4 ships similar to the Spruance class for the Iranian Navy back during the days of the Shah. Mm-hmm. Well, that went bad. Mm-hmm. And so what do you do with 4 ships partially under construction? And it was sort of interesting watching the political dynamics of the same people in Congress who said those ships are too advanced to be giving to the Iranian Navy or selling to the Iranian Navy. When it was time to fund them and put them into the U.S. Navy, you said, "Oh, well, those are obsolete. They're not powerful enough to be in the Navy." Stennis and Eastland made that happen.
And Trent Lott, it was interesting because Trent Lott lived in the county.
He did,
and he was always
lived on the beach.
Always committed.
He was and brought people just like Phil did. I mean, Trent brought Dick Cheney when his wife sponsored a ship at Ingalls. He brought James Baker when his wife sponsored a ship at Ingalls. He Dan Quayle, his wife. You look at the who's who in American politics. They have sat on the front porch of Trent Lott's house on Beach Boulevard in Pascagoula.
And then Gene Taylor.
Gene Taylor
was always a big proponent.
Big proponent. Had been in the Coast Guard and knew what that took and looked after us. So a shipyard the size of Ingalls, we're agnostic in politics. We're for our friends, and what letter they have after their name doesn't matter to us. Mm-hmm. The same has been true for those leaders over the years. We've had great leadership, in Washington in both parties. Some in power, some not in power, but they've all looked out for Mississippi shipyard.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time together, Jim, but I don't remember an editorial board with either Trent or Gene Taylor where they didn't start the conversation with a discussion about the military and Ingalls.
Absolutely.
It was so important to them. And so anyway, it's been a great visit.
Absolutely.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time. And I hope that people pay close attention, because this is a great, important lesson about Ingalls and why we're so lucky to have it. So this has been Jim McIngvale, who is the Director of Communication and Public Affairs for Ingalls Shipbuilding. And look forward to next time, Jim.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Enjoyed it very much.
You bet, buddy.
Appreciate you.
Take care.
You too.